I'm Jared Stern.
I'm also Jared Stern.
And you're
between two Sterns.
This is our first official moment bringing a guest onto the show. Jared, he is a friend of yours, so I'll let you introduce him. But
good buddy of mine. We came up together as comics in the DC, Virginia scene at Wiseacres, and now he is a real big degenerate gambler, and so much so that he's trying to teach other people to be just like him. Welcome everybody to the program, Mr. Chris Culosi.
What is going on, boys? I'm very, very excited to be between two Sterns this eve.
How you been, man?
I've been fine. I heard you mention Wiseacres. Were you saying something before introing me about the Wiseacres days?
I was just saying that's where we first probably encountered each other back in the old open mic scene in DC.
And when I listened to your intro or your tease of me last week saying that that like I was a lapsed comic or whatever, and the reason that is I went, okay, I did well, and then was fearful to ever not do. Like the best thing you could do is suck ass because you can only go up. I did well, and then Mike's like, I want you to come host, and I want you to, and I'm like, whoa. So I never really like got fully into it. And then Eric, may he rest in peace, when he and I reconnected, he brought me to places like I would never be able to get in on my own. It's like I feature for him at the Richmond Funny, but like I've always been able to do it. But the idea of like putting my name on a list and standing in line and waiting, and it's one of my regrets. I wish I could get back into it, but I feel like I don't know anyone. I'm not connected, and I don't want to go through all the steps. So, anyways, it's enough about me. How are you guys?
I'm curious though, because I've seen how you've kind of transformed over the years. Did you just find out you were really good at gambling, or what brought you into it? Is what it's.
I've never claimed to be like the best at gambling or anything like that, but I am a gambler in the sense of I understand. There's nothing about gambling that I don't understand and that I don't know. So to answer your question, from a very young age, you want to know how you turn your kid into either of you have kids? You don't have kids, right, Jared?
No,
not that I know of.
Neither, and neither you know of. Okay, so here's how you turn your kid into a gambler without meaning to. So I come from an Italian family. My parents from the Lower East Side of Manhattan, but I was born here, but they never lost their accent. So if you hear any of that, that stems, those come out of here. That's where that comes from. So when I was younger, my grandfather liked to go to the track and stuff and bet the horses. And I remember being like young and like in a trifecta, not even know what it was.
Sure.
And by the end of the day, at like 8 years old, I was like, give me the 2-4. I want you to box it. Give me a superfecta. I want the 2 with the 3. I want to play. Okay. And I hit one. Just like beginner's luck, and he gives me like the money. He gave me like $400, which to me was like, "Oh my, you kidding me? I'm 8 years old, right?" And we used to play poker. We get together at the grandparents' house in Jersey, and we would play like poker with all the family. And no matter whether I won or lost, I always got all the pennies at the end, right? So like I always won.
It's a pretty good deal.
But that's not good. You don't want to go in. I always win,
right?
So I kind of had this desire of like winning money and how fun it was. And my dad's also a mathematician. Right. And so even though I'm not a math genius by any means, some of that blood's in there though, where I see statistics, I kind of understand them. When's a good time to go against the grain and blah, blah, blah. And it's strange to me because I heard that you guys don't really know anything really about gambling. And that is so foreign to me because every person that's like a close friend of mine knows everything there is to know. It's almost like being like a heroin addict, which is not a good comparison, but where like everyone knows like all the lingo and whatever. Sure. And it blows my mind that I'm like, how do you guys not know what this is? So maybe we should start there and I can teach you some things.
I think that you must be good at gambling, because if you're good at gambling, then it's a profession. But if you're bad at gambling, it's an addiction. And consider you're coming on to talk about it. I don't know if you're actually coming on for us to intervene on an addiction right now. So I'm assuming that there's some sort of professional component to what's going on.
It's probably a little bit of both. I think Norm Macdonald said it the best when he went, gambling is the only disease you can have where you can win a bunch of money.
So what do you look for in a bet to make it? I mean, there's obviously no such thing as a sure bet, but what do you look for to make a bet appetizing to you?
Well, I got heavy into the daily fantasy side of it for a while, and I had some really big wins. I had a $100,000 win in NBA in 2015. I don't know where any of this money is now, but in 2015 I won 100,000 a tournament. Then I won another 50, and then I won another 25. So I had a good year that year, and I really started to get into the research side of things. So there are websites, one that I used to work for, rotogrinders.com, that once I stopped like winning at daily fantasy, they kind of cut me loose, like, because it's all, what have you done for me lately kind of thing. There's this theory kind of that the public is stupid because Vegas always wins. With my Patreon page that I started, that's more of just like a fun place I tend to win over time. So it's just bet everything I bet at a ratio that's the same as mine. If you can't bet exactly what I bet, if I'm betting $100 a game and you can only afford to bet $10 a game or whatever, make sure the ratio is the same, bet everything I bet. And over time, I tend to go this way.
So I probably got about 12% of that. But what I have realized, is just by listening to you, is that all the stock market is gambling. The entire,
yeah.
Because Julie plays the stock market, and my eyes glaze over pretty much in the same way when she talks about that as when Chris talked. And there's no question that both of you know what you're talking about, but the stock market is legalized gambling. I'm correct in this, right?
Yeah, it's not even almost not that. Like
because what you're saying is the exact same thing. You're just substituting different, whether it's stocks for games, whether it's, over under for. It's the exact same thing. I've never known this before.
The only like kind of difference there is the concept of in the market, because I'm in the market too. And the only thing that I would say is different is that when you lose money in the market, it's not necessarily really gone, because the stock can always come back unless it comes back or up.
Sure.
So because you still own the shares, it can come back, but you can't throw your whole wad at one thing and then have it go. Which I do all the time. It's some of the most fun. The chase is some of the best. I pissed away 5,100 like over the next 4 days. I had one of my subscribers leave me, and then I hit like a 5-game parlay that paid 7,100. So it's a journey, man. It's a marathon.
Yeah, it's an ebb and flow. It's a marathon, not a sprint, but a
roller coaster ride.
Yeah, the heart attack for me comes when you lose the 5,100 though.
Sounds exhausting.
Yeah.
What I hear is that you had $5,100 and then you didn't. That's the part where my brain goes, probably could have just held on to that 5,100. That looks pretty good right there.
What's so funny about that? So
and by the way, before you respond, I know that this is the case because you said within the past 10 minutes the following words to me. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
I made 100K and then I made 50K on top of that. I have no idea where that money went. And that sentence alone triggered an anxiety attack within me. I was like, how did you lose $150,000?
The best part, the first win I ever had for DFS, Daily Fantasy Sports on DraftKings. Shout out to DraftKings.
Are we sponsoring DraftKings in this episode, or are we just demonstrating?
No, but they hired me because I've worked for different like outlets for a short period of time, and they've always been very good to me. So screw it, I'm giving them a shout out.
We'll tag DraftKings in this. We're trying to get sponsorship wherever we can.
I won a baseball thing for 25 grand, like the first 4 days I ever played. Dumb luck, right? And then I went to the casino and I pissed it away playing blackjack, and I'm thinking. I'm also a very good blackjack player. Losing 25,000 doesn't sound like I'm a good blackjack player, but I am. But I lost the money, and but in my mind I'm going, okay, well that's just going to kind of write itself off for tax purposes because they're both like gambling activities. But DraftKings and Daily Fantasy Sports is not considered a gambling activity.
So I was going to bring this up earlier, but this is kind of a good segue. When you were talking about playing the wrestling video game with a friend of yours, I think, and Jared, I might not have established this for you, there is a difference between gambling and betting. I am happy to bet on things that I think I have the capability of winning. I don't like gambling on things that I have no control over. So like
betting on yourself versus betting on like a sport.
I'll play poker because I have I am involved in, or I'll play blackjack, or when I was younger, the game that I bet on was GoldenEye on N64.
Oh, great game.
If my brother is listening to this, he will remember a time when I became so good that his friends would not play me because I would win. So I would have to put money on top of the table give them 3 of the screens, and I would play against all 3 of them. And if they won, they could take the money. And if not, we would go on. So to me, that's not gambling, that's betting. And I think that, or whatever the 2 terms are.
Anything that is where I believe the official like terminology or whatever is if it is a more luck-based game than a skill-based game. Okay. And even though poker doesn't fall into that, for some reason, poker is still kind of, I mean, eventually I think it'll be fine, but poker is still kind of fallen into this place where they're calling it a skill game, but it's still not really legal. There's one site that you can use that has like a workaround where, get this, you deposit money and you get, it's completely legal. You get coins, and then you can play with the coins, and then you can use those coins to redeem prizes. One of the prizes you can redeem is 1-to-1 for cash on your coin.
I was going to say it's cash. So is this your main profession? Is this how you're making money right now?
No, I don't do anything. Like I have parents that are like way too nice to me, and I never grew up. I'm a full-blown Peter Pan. So yeah, is it the way I earn, some pocket money, some spending money, and if I can ever get on like a really nasty run again or whatever, sure. Yeah. But it's always kind of like, I mean, not paycheck to paycheck kind of thing. It's ebbs and flows. And I'm a recluse. I don't like to do anything. I don't even need a lot of money, really. Like I just kind of sit in my house and watch television and bet on games, because you're never bored if you like to gamble, because it's like, what's going on? Well, something's on. I was betting tennis in the Ukraine the other night. Just like, yeah, this guy, that guy, the best dude. It's the
okay. So I think maybe you do have a problem, Chris.
I was going to say, Chris, you are riding the hell out of this line between sounding like a fully functioning human man and then also being like, this guy clearly has an addiction. Like I asked, to give you an example, I asked, is this how you make money? Is this your job? And your immediate response was, no, I've got really good parents. What are you talking about? No, they pay for everything. I sit in bed, I smoke cigarettes, and I play fantasy games, which, by the way, seems like a pretty decent life.
Yeah, I'm not even almost. I have no desire to. People always go like, why won't you move out? I just look at my parents. They're like, you're 38 years old. Aren't you embarrassed by? I'm like, absolutely not. I'm like, I'm Italian, and Italian women treat their Italian sons like kings. Yeah. Like these people all over the world are trying to like work as hard as they can to someday, maybe, hopefully, you'll be able to afford maybe a private chef, a private shopper. I was born with one. Her name's Mom, and she's an angel, and I love her. Never want to leave. I never want to leave, ever.
Speaking of funding your lifestyle, where can people find your Patreon?
Yes, please do.
It's patreon.com/Culosi. I've also got a puppet that I call the Major, because when I was on DraftKings, or not DraftKings, Roto Grinders, I was their closing like before lineup lock guy. People would ask me this guy or this guy, this guy or this guy, and I had a show on there for like a year and a half, 2 years, where I actually got paid to do it. And like I said, then that went by the wayside. So now I'm doing this thing, patreon.com/Culosi. I don't guarantee I'm gonna win like anything, but I keep my chart and I look at it almost like a stock, because that's another thing. Like you were saying, like a stock. Yeah. If I'm going up, and I can't win forever, if I say A, go B. Like it's kind of like just a place where, do you want to get in and invest on me now, or do you want to go against me? It's just a place, and no one does that. That's the thing that's about that. There's so many snaky motherfuckers that just scream, winners. Whatever I bet, I show that win or lose, I'm willing to take the risk as well. Chances are, if you're someone who's paying for picks, you're not like a big, huge gambler. Some guy betting $5 a game isn't coming in. He thinks he knows what he's doing. Part of the fun of it is wanting to pick your own thing. But if you're someone that bets a little bit, it's like, take solace in, I'm going to win you money or I'm going to do worse. So like, it's almost like it's hard to hate me, which sounds so arrogant, but it's like, I'm losing too. Like I'm just trying to help, but what are you going to do? But right now I'm on a tear. I won my 2 bets today. I think I'm ahead like 300-400 today. And if Gonzaga can get their shit together, which I don't think they can, but if they do, I'll win some more money. So it's been a good day. Can I tell my $100,000 blackjack win story? Do we have time?
Please.
Yeah, I think that's a great story. Let's do it.
Okay, so I had come into some settlement money because of a tragedy. Don't need to get into that, but it was money that like I didn't even really want. And like it's almost like I feel bad even having it. It's a whole struggle that's not humorous for the show. It's a whole soul search. My brother. Anyway, so I start going to Atlantic City more. And now I can point to a checking account that's got like a lot of money in it.
Yeah.
And so they started extending with no job, like no income or anything, and they didn't give a shit. So they gave me like a $50,000 credit line, and I could just pick up the phone and be like, "Hey, I want to come." And they'd send a limo, and I get in it with me and my boys, whatever. We go up there, big suite, whatever. You know, they pay for everything. One way or another. Like I own chandeliers in that motherfucker, like for sure. I look at that's my TV, that's my chandelier. Anyways, this whole thing culminates with one weekend. I get invited to an invitation-only blackjack tournament, no buy-in. You didn't have to put up any money. It was 6 people. And it's tournament style blackjack. And I got really into card counting. And unless you're like a full MIT genius, it doesn't really matter if you're doing just a basic, card counting system, up, one, down. So it's tournament blackjack where you just have to beat the other people. It's like 10 hands, and you beat the other people, they're going to give you $100,000. So I'm going to go up there for that. So I go up there, and that was the weekend they also increased my credit line to $100,000. So I immediately, I haven't even checked in my hotel room yet. I remember I won 10 grand. I was trying to go for 20. My buddy who was with me tells me, let's go up to the room, take a break, whatever. I didn't want to, but I did. Went up, came out, half an hour later, proceeded to lose that. And over the course of the next like 5 or 6 hours, and I couldn't even believe it because it wasn't like money. At this point, I had gone through a bunch of the money that I had. And now this was kind of like, now I'm playing a dangerous game where it's like, I've got like maybe 40, 50 grand left, and I've got $100,000. Like, this is not, this is bad. Okay. So we're like in full, like meltdown, like gambler addiction mode.
Good.
So I lose the money. Right. And now I'm in a situation where I got to win this fucking blackjack tournament tomorrow to be even. You know what I mean? God. I got to win this blackjack tournament to be even. So I lose the blackjack tournament. Immediately. I go all in on the first hand because I just know, like, I just gotta, it was one of those things where when you're having a bad run, a lot of times you start talking to God, or you start talking to the powers that be, or whatever, and you're like, you start making deals. You're like, oh, okay, I won't do this. I'll go to church every Sunday, or whatever in your head. And I'm like, look, I just need to win like 3 hands in a row. If I can turn these 10,000 fake chips into 20 to 40, and 40 to 80, they're not going to be able to catch me. And like
I just want to make sure I'm emotionally with you at this point in the story. You arrive to this casino with $100,000.
Yes.
And $100,000.
Well, $100,000 credit line. Like,
how much cash did you have showing up?
None.
Okay, so you just have the $100,000. You win 10K. You go up to the hotel room. You come back down. You lose 110,000.
A meltdown. Yes, meltdown.
You're 100K in the hole.
Yeah.
And you go all in on the first hand of blackjack.
Well, yeah, okay. I have to win this money.
Right.
I don't even remember what the dealer had or whatever. I lose. I'm out. Like by the second, like, hand, I'm done. And I'm just standing there going like, oh my God, what did I do? Now, because I'm an established player over at the Borgata, which is where this was going on, I go over to the Tropicana and I pull out, they give me a $15,000 line because they don't know me and there's not as much money now in the place where I pointed them to. Okay. Mm-hmm. So they give me a $15,000 line. I lose that 15K.
Oh, so wait, how much are you in the hole at this point?
At this point, I am down $115,000. Now I don't have any money and I'm very upset. And I'm like, and a bad gambling loss is like, you just become, it's so wrenching. It's just like you're
sometimes feeling.
Oh, sometimes you're crying. You're like, what do they do? Like it very much like probably the way an addict feels when they fucked up for the 8,000. Like it's the worst. Okay.
Well, let me just kind of put things in perspective for me anyway. I've never had $100,000, let alone lost.
Yeah,
$100,000.
I can fix this whole problem if I just keep going, right? It's that gambler's mindset. So I lose the 15 at the Tropicana, and now I have no money. And I didn't know this, but you can take out something called a TTO, which is this trip only. It's good for an additional 20% over top of your credit limit. Like you have a limit, but they'll give you an extra 20%. So I take that 10 grand, and it is Sunday morning. They know I'm down on this money, and I've like confided. It started from like, now it's like, I don't know how I'm gonna pay this guy. Like, I don't know what I did. Like, I'm having like deep conversations with the dealers and shit. So they know that I'm stuck this 60K. I've now lost the 15 at the Tropicana. I get another 10, and now it's Sunday. It's 5 a.m. I'm broke, but I have this $10,000, and I already know I'm not going to get it back at blackjack. It's going to take too long. So I'm like, I need to get lucky now. So I walk over to the high limit slot room and I start playing $500 slots. So this is how degenerate $500 slots is, because there's no $500 bill. And if you didn't know you could do that, this is what you do. You stumble over furious and you go, want, click. Want, click. Want, click. Want, click. Want, click. Diggity.
$100 at a time. You're throwing $100. Yeah.
You pull a thing. Diggity. Click. Nothing.
Is this like a Wheel of Fortune slot or
the cherries and the fucking bells?
This is insane.
But they pay out more often. As opposed to the other ones because of the whatever. So I end up winning like $5,000. I win $15,000. So I'm like, oh, now I got $15,000. I called my host over the Tropicana calls me and he goes, oh, I'm sorry, I missed you, Chris. I was trying to get more money than the $15,000 over the Tropicana and they wouldn't give it to me. He goes, oh, Chris, I'm sorry. I could have got you okayed for like, 30, but you already took your line out. I go, well, hey, hang on a second. I go, if I come and I pay my 15 down, can I then open it for 30? He's like, of course. So I take Borgata money over to the Tropicana, clear my line. They give me 30,000. It is now 7 a.m. during a shift change. There is one dealer. There is one pit boss, the guy who like watches over, what's going on. Mm-hmm. And I go into the high limit room and now I'm just in a complete meltdown. I don't care. So I'm like, I got $30,000. I'm going to piss it away. I put $2,000 down. I win. Yay. I could give a shit. I'm down 60K. Put another 1,000 down. 2,000. I win. I bet 3,000. I win. 45 minutes later, I look down and I've got like $60,000 or $70,000. And now all of a sudden there's 4 pit bosses. They're on the phone. They're talking to people because this is like a huge loss. You don't expect someone to walk in at 6 because I didn't lose it. I didn't lose it to them.
Right.
You know
sure.
what I mean? Like I'm walking in there. And so they make me move tables. They switch dealers on me. There's security now, like eyeballing me. I feel like I'm like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
I play some more. I do this again. And I've got like a little over $130,000 in front of me. And my buddy comes over and he's like, all right, you're done. I go, okay, look, I'm going to bet the max bet you can make. It was one of the Tropicana's things where you can make a $20,000 bet. It was like the max wager they would take it. They were only the casino that would take like a $20,000 wager on a single hand. So I'm like, okay, look, I've made my money back. Everything's good. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bet $20,000 until I lose like 1. Or if I lose 2 in a row, if I win or whatever, I'm going to see if I can really work. Because I was just hitting everything. It was crazy. And so I made a $20,000 bet. I won it. Made another $20,000 bet, lost it. Made one more $20,000 bet, lost that. And I went, okay, I'm out of here. And I left with like $115,000 or $130,000 what I had in front of me. I gave them back their 30 grand. And now they're counting me out $100,000 in cash. And I'm saying to them, how do I get out of here?
Yeah.
Because I'm not staying at the Tropicana. I'm staying at the Borgata. And I'm like, well, can you give me a car? Can you get? And they were kind of like, no. So I say to my buddy who was with me, I go, how the fuck? I'm not walking out of the people are watching me now at this.
Yeah, right, sure.
What am I gonna? So he goes, I gotta go off camera for a second to grab this. He framed this for me. Hold on. So he goes to the gift shop and he gets this bag. Okay. This
Tropicana gift bag.
Rinky dink Tropicana gift bag. Okay. And we put $100,000 in cash into this fucking rinky dink bag. He saved the bag and it says this bag was used to take $100,000 in winnings from the Tropicana on 10/10/2011 by Christopher Culosi. It's a very, very nice keepsake. So we have this bag, this rinky dink for the listeners. It's like a bag that you might get your groceries from or whatever. And we are standing on the side of the road hailing a cab. Okay, we're hailing a cab. We get into a cab. It's taking us back to the Tropicana, and they make small talk in the cabs. The cab driver's like, "So how'd you do, man?" And I'm just I'm like, "Oh, they got it all."
Right? Yeah.
Oh, they got it all. They ripped my heart out. Like I'm doing a whole thing, and my buddy's laughing. I'm like, "How am I gonna eat?" We finally get back to the Borgata, where there is like, there's no security. We're under the overpad. The door's right there. I get out, I reach into my bag, I go, I actually won $100,000. I give him $200 tip and I go inside. Because as sick as I am, I actually won $100,000 to $200, but the $200 isn't real money to me.
Yeah, sure.
You know what I mean? It's like change. It's like, so yeah, I'm like, I go to the blackjack table where I lost all the money, walk over to them all sad. They're like, so how'd you do, Jared? I go, I just won $100,000 from them. I poured it all over the table. They're like, is that Tropicana money? Oh, we love Tropicana money. Paid it back, went back home. Great weekend.
And then, cool.
and then I never went back to Atlantic City again.
Chris, I've been nervous to have you on the show, and I'll tell you why. Because when talking about something like gambling, I was always concerned that you would tell some romantic gambling story that would make me feel like, A, I've been missing out on something my entire life, or B, make me then want to start gambling. And I don't think there's a single person listening to you that's going to pick up gambling after this.
Hey, listen, if this sounds like something you want to get in on, go to patreon.com/Culosi and get in on some of this action.
If this sounds like something you want to get in on, we'll provide in the bio below a link for Gamblers Anonymous, because if anything Chris has said has given you the idea that you should get into gambling, please call this hotline.
If you're going to start gambling, any of you, you will lose more money on your own than if you were doing what I was doing, because I'm better than you. Is kind of like, you might have lost $500 on your own. I'll get you out of there -200. I'd love to get you up, but it's one of those kinds of things. I make no claims. There's no 5-star locks of the week. There's no bet your mother's house and put it all on black. There's none of that. It's here's what I'm doing. If you want to follow along. Ride me, sexual. Ride my picks. And if I do well, you do well. If I do shitty, you might do shitty. So far, since I've started this thing, I'm ahead just under 13,000. But after today, I might be up just over 15 on this most recent whatever. So if you were with me from the beginning, I've gotten a 150% multiple on the 10 grand I started with. So too would you if you came along.
We definitely learned a lot from Chris today. Chris, thank you for coming on the program.
I loved being between two sterns. I will do this anytime. I don't just bring gambling to the table. I'm a fucking ball of talent, guys. I'm a ball of talent. I do YouTube videos. I fucking stand up. I sing. I do everything. But thank you guys very much for having me, honestly and truly. And I do like what you guys are doing.
We'll be happy to have you back on at some point.
Absolutely.
Anytime. And guys, anyone that knows me, because I'm going to post this on my Twitter, stuff and my 1,500 followers or whatever. Keep watching the show and keep listening to the show, because it is very funny. They're two very funny and talented comedians. I myself actually do listen to it every single week. You may have come by to see what I'm talking about because you know me, but you should know them too. And I'm out later.
Thanks for the shout out, Chris. Appreciate you. That was a roller coaster.
Yeah, that was a ride right there, man. I feel like I lost and gained a lot during that entire conversation.
It is clear that Chris is made to be digested with all of your senses.
Yes.
Because watching Chris or listening to Chris is just not enough. You got to really visualize the whole package. By the way, did your brain melt just a little bit when he said that he lost over $100,000?
Yeah. That's money I've never seen or thought of in my life. I mean, that's to be able to have access to that kind of, to have lost $100,000, to have gained and lost $100,000 over the span of a week.
Jared, 2 years ago, I was living in a garage in Inglewood, and I'm listening to this guy talk about, it hurts. It hurts me. Like, if this, here's how I know that I'm a little bit more than half Jewish. Right. Because it hurts me physically to hear this.
Yeah, to have 3 Jewish ears listening to that and just yeah.
Did you say 3 Jewish ears?
Yeah.
It's funny.
1.5 Jews.
I know. It's funny.